Croeso Channel Blaid Llwyd. Welcome back to Polar Nights. This is our third episode, and it has been a while. The dev has had quite a few real life things going on, including some nasty stuff. I read the itch.io, so I'm glad to see that he's doing well. And if you remember from last time, we have been on board the Sylvia searching for the Arran, the ship that was lost some years ago, with the crew, and now we are searching for it. But there's some problems on the Sylvia. Things are not running well on the ship. There's been blackouts, problems with the engines. Is someone trying to sabotage the place? Maybe. But we continue looking for the Arran. And that's what we're going to continue doing right now. Hey, you're done having a wee cry. Fuck off. Come on, you can't stay there forever. Friday's gone and Mum is worried. Don't care. There was rustling and grunting, some swearing as I heard him climbing the wall. I hurriedly wiped my eyes and nose. Soon he hauled himself up beside me on my perch, a tall wall overlooking the park near my home. Fuck me sideways. I miss being a wee skinny rake. Enjoy it while you can. You won't be able to climb walls like these once you put some meat on those bones. Not my fault you're a fatty. He was built like a boxer, but still, it was all I could think of in the moment. Cheeky wee cunt. He nudged me but grinned, then pulled me into a headlock and pulled on my ears. Connor, get off me, you fucking... You fucking what? What you gonna do about it, wee man? He continued to tug on my ears, a tease he'd done since as long as I could remember. As miserable as I was and as much as he infuriated me, I grinned, started to laugh even as I struggled to free myself. I thrust an elbow into his stomach, causing an oof and forcing him to finally release me. You're fat dirty. He pushed me away playfully and I shoved him back. We pup have some bite after all. Prick. And just like that, as furious and seething as I'd been, it melted away, leaving us sat quietly, watching the streetlights slowly flicker to life in the advancing dusk. I hate him. The words burst from me like an angry sneeze. We were quiet a moment more, then... I fucking hate him! I expected my brother to tease me, as was his insufferable habit. He never knew when he was taking things too far, and often I got the impression he just didn't care. Aye, he's a cunt. He spoke so matter-of-factly, giving nothing away. He actually likes you, though. He likes he can call himself my dad. He isn't like me. He likes I'm captain of the football team and I had good marks in school. If I quit football and stopped giving a fuck about my grades, it'd be a different story. Oh, by the way, that thing I found in your room. Fuck. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks and my tail curled tight against me in humiliation. So, you into guys? I just wanted to fall into the ground and disappear. Both. Oh, aye. The lads and the lassies. Greedy wee fuck. I glanced up at him and was met with a wide, toothy grin. That's why you're not into sports. Too many sweaty huffing lads all hot and... Connor, for the love of fuck, shut up! I was tempted to hurl myself from the wall and pray I broke my neck, but Connor just laughed and slapped my back. I'll be sure to invite my footy pals over. You'll think you died and gone to heaven. I gave a low, humiliated whine and covered my eyes. Just kidding, wee man. You know I love you anyway. Now. He slapped his hands together. Why don't you take me home before Mum starts to worry? With a heavy sigh I nodded and we turned to start climbing back down the wall. My heart felt a little lighter than it had done in a long time. Slowly, my eyes opened, burning from tiredness. It felt like it only just dropped off. It was pitch black again, but this time the room was uncomfortably warm. I peeled off my bed sheets, groaned as I swung my paws over. The radiator was on full blast. I knelt and turned it down. At least I now knew Joseph had fixed the heating. My stomach clenched as I remembered the events of yesterday. Guilt followed by anxiety over how I could stand to face a pissed-off crew for the next couple of weeks. Or at least half of them were. It was matted and damp. The heating must have been on for a while now. As much as I just wanted to drop off again, I knew the sweltering heat would keep me awake. I checked my phone. 3:11 a.m. I figured a shower wouldn't be amiss. I need to change my bed sheets before I try to sleep again, though. Before I did, though, I decided to open my bedroom porthole. I could let the excess heat out while I showered, hopefully making the room cool again before bed. I padded over the windows and grabbed the handle and pushed, inviting a gust of frigid air inside. Gazing out, I could see... Is that land? It was hard to tell with the haze in the distance. No doubt another blizzard on the way. There was what appeared to be a vast field of solid ice nearby. Were those mountains? Where the hell were we? I thought we'd be searching the sea floor, and Sharif didn't mention checking land. You know what? This can wait until after I clean up. After stripping off my underwear, I turned the knob for the shower. Despite the heating being on, I wasn't taking chances this time. I placed a hand tentatively in the stream to ensure it wasn't either going to scald me or freeze me. Fortunately, it settled at a comfortable temperature, and I climbed in, adjusting it down a little for a cooler wash. A long, satisfied sigh escaped my muzzle as I just stood, head leaned back, allowing the water to run over my chest. I allowed myself a smirk at the irony of needing to cool down while in the middle of the Arctic. My anxious brain was quiet for a change. The insufferable voice that was always looking for things to worry over was properly overwhelmed at the options it had right now. My smirk turned to a chuckle. I don't know why I felt in such good spirits, but I wasn't going to question it. Just as I turned the handle to shut off the water. Ha ha! Like a red-hot poker being jammed into my eye, I clamped it shut, covering it with a hand. I struggled over the sink where my toiletries bag was. I fumbled the bottle of Proxy and popped the top off, then it fell to the floor as I squeezed one, then two drops in. Another sigh, harsher and less relaxed, but no less relieved. I allowed it to do its work as I closed my eye and leaned over the sink. Once my eye was pain-free, for now, I glanced up at myself. Once again my gaze was drawn by my gaunt frame, the way my ribcage stuck out beneath my fur. The memory of my first night here, almost naked in front of the others, made me grit my teeth. I pulled on my left eyelid to examine it. The milky cataract stared blankly back. What could anyone see in this fucking skeletal wreckage of a wolf? Bile rose up my throat. A burning coal of hatred ignited once more on my chest as I remembered the man who did this. I was interrupted in my self-pity by a noise. Muffled but unmistakably the sounds of voices. I pricked an ear, glancing towards my bedroom. Was that a shout? I padded back into my bedroom, ears still pricked and swivelling, trying to catch the voice again. Then... Quiet. Come with. I couldn't make out much, but I recognised the voice. Joseph's deep baritone was unmistakable. I shuffled the door, placing the ear against it and listened intently. I could hear paw steps retreating back towards the engine room stairs. I decided to risk it. I carefully twisted the knob, grimacing as I did my best to open my cabin door quietly. The corridor was dark again. The power in my room was on, so someone must have switched the lights off manually. My eyes adjusted a bit in the darkness of my bedroom, just enough to spot the figures at the far end of the corridor. As one of the bulkheads had gotten up and started walking, one was undoubtedly Joseph. The other was much smaller, but given the glimpse I got of the long, thin tail, it had to be June. I only saw them for a moment before they disappeared down the steps of the lower deck. Told you. Dangerous. We're not here. When we... Their voices were hushed, but I could hear the tension. June sounded angry? I got the impression June and Joseph were closer than either would ever admit. It could be a late-night rendezvous, but the tone of their voices suggested otherwise. Yeah, I needed to follow them. I figured I should maybe pull my trousers on at least, but if I could catch the entire conversation, I'd risk it. I padded down the corridor carefully, my eyes adjusted slowly, but even in full night vision I could only make out the vague shapes of the other cabin doors. God, I hope nobody decided to go for a late night walk right now. Once at the bottom of the stairs, I turned to my right. I could see the light glow from underneath Joseph's cabin door. Already I could hear raised voices. Promise me, no, without my say-so. I could not. If he questioned you, truthfully say you didn't know. I crept closer. This is the second time I'd heard June so angry, at the incident of the bar with Aaron and Dana. They were obviously moving around, or at least one of them was. Their voices kept shifting in volume and how muffled they were. That's for me to scare the life out of me. And now the others are... There was an awkward pause and I chanced a few more steps closer. Continue? Are you serious? How? How should I? Now he knows. Yes, 2 weeks to. You saw how they all blamed. What are they talking about? He knows? 2 weeks to what? I wanted to get closer to hear more, but I couldn't risk having them suddenly open the door to see me naked and snooping. I instead stayed put, giving me what I hoped was enough distance to reach the stairs if I needed to leave in a hurry. Her voice was mournful now, more subdued. She didn't seem to be moving around as much. We should have had the chance. You know why? We understand both of our lives. My life is already... How long is he going to? We've been over this. That's why he'll never be able to. Without me. I felt my blood run cold as I hear a similar tone in his voice when Rufus had taunted him. Whoever this he was, Joseph was not fond of him. And who is he? There was a brief cry and the sounds of muffled sobbing. There was only inaudible murmuring as I assumed Joseph comforted June. My mouth was dry and my heart raced. There really was something going on, and now I trapped us all on this thing. Should I tell someone? Would anyone believe me? It would be my word against Joseph and June. And really, what would I be accusing them of? All I could say for sure is they were both up to something. It sounded like they're doing it to screw over some unknown guy. Motion from the room made my heart skip a beat, and I quickly slipped back towards the stairs, just as the door opened, bathed in the spot where I'd been stood moments before in light. I don't think I'd ever climbed stairs so quickly in my life. I'd made it to the door a second before I heard June reach the top of the stairs. Thankfully I'd not turned on my bedroom light. I closed the door as quietly as I could and waited, my ear against the wood. Rapid footsteps approached and I felt my heart leap into my throat. They stopped. Fuck, I'd been caught. She spotted me. She was going to knock. Do you mind I explain? A soft whimper and sniff followed by a sharp inhale. The sounds of rustling clothes as though she was fixing her clothing. Then the footsteps continued, fading until there was only silence again. I turned, leaning my back against the door. My thoughts raced. Maybe I could change my mind. Tell the others I'd had enough. It'd be hard on Gail and Stefan. I'd no idea what June and Joseph were up to, but Joseph clearly had a grudge against someone and June was involved. And the rest of us were caught up in his pissing match in the worst possible place. The morning was going to be fantastic. Another bout of Sharif shouting, Tabby complaining, maybe Rufus and Joseph butting heads. Who could I tell about this? I didn't know who the he that Joseph was referring to could be, and I didn't want to get involved. What if I tipped off whoever Joseph was feuding with? Morning. This could wait till morning. I continued to silently grumble to myself as I flicked the light on and pulled fresh sheets from the cupboard. I threw the old stuff in a corner. I could deal with laundry in the morning. It had cooled right down with the porthole open, so I closed it again so I didn't freeze. No sooner had I finished making the bed, I flopped down and gave a groan of frustration. If I'd known this trip would be such a clusterfuck. But then, I reached for my phone and once again gazed sadly at Mum's texts. Guilt threatened to overwhelm me, but this time, I remembered my decision. Against all odds, I decided to continue. For her. As much as it hurt me to know she must be beside herself with worry, I took some small comfort in that. I sat her back down, resolving to prioritise above all else getting into contact to reassure her I was fine. I closed my eyes, feeling a small measure of optimism. The sounds of ice bumping and scraping the hulls unsettling. It was sporadic, mostly seeming to come from my side of the ship. I remembered seeing what appeared to be land of some kind last I'd looked out the porthole. Maybe we were navigating around an island or something. Being close to land did settle my nerves a bit whenever a particularly loud ice impact sent a chill through me. What was it Stefan had said? Something about an old sailing ship getting crushed in ice? Then I found myself reasoning the metal hull of the Sylvia was, hopefully, more resilient to such a fate. Thought of using Stefan's ramblings to reassure myself brought a small smile. I don't know how long I lay there, just listening to the sounds and trying to organise my thoughts. The air was cool, but the gentle motion of the ship combined with the quiet noises of the ice made it hard to fully switch off. It seemed to be developing from low, echoey snapping to more of a crackling noise. Maybe we were entering thicker ice? After a while of failing to drop off, with a resigned huff I threw off the covers and stood. Fuck this, I'm going for a smoke. But then it hit me. No lighter. Okay, fuck this. I'm going for a walk. Maybe getting some air would help, and I could see the ice situation for myself. I pulled on my clothing, ensuring I had a few bottles of Proxy and Diclo in case I had another thunderclap. My smokes were in my pocket as per usual, even without a lighter. It was automatic, like making sure I had my phone, wallet, or keys. Zipping my jacket up, I listened for sounds in the corridor for a moment to ensure I wouldn't run into anyone before making my way to the deck. The snow crunched underfoot as I made my way to the side. My hand moved on its own to my pocket, and I was halfway to pulling a smoke from the pack with my teeth when I remembered my missing lighter. I never really realised just how ingrained the habit was. My heart picked up and my nerves frayed, especially at the prospect of my Ellison going missing. Maybe I'll convince some of the others to help me search tomorrow. Maybe. With a heavy sigh, I leaned on a bulwark and gazed out towards the rising dark, snow-capped peaks, looming out of what looked like an incoming blizzard. Another batch of bad weather. I wish Sharif had picked a better time of year for this expedition. I didn't know what to make of this stuff with Joseph. My suspicion about the breakers being deliberately screwed up seemed to be on the money. While I was pondering how to react when I saw it. Subtle at first, but then the smell hit. Acrid, cloying and foul. The scent hit the back of my throat and burned my nose, triggering a wrenching cough. Tufts of smoke were escaping from somewhere beneath me from the portholes. I glanced over the side and felt my heart stop. Oily black fumes were pouring out of a porthole. As I watched with dawning horror, the smoke intensified and was joined by plumes billowing from a second, then third porthole. Fuck! Just as I spun on my heel to run inside, a figure skidded out the door from the lounge. Garrett! Dana! There's fire! Smoke! I know. Stay here. Do not go back inside. She tossed a life jacket at me and I turned back. If anyone else shows up, tell them to stay right there. I need to find the captain and warn the others. Before I could protest, she dashed back inside. My mouth was dry, my hands shook. I fumbled with the jacket, trying to put it on over my bulky coat. I coughed again as the wind blew the smoke back into my face. I couldn't stay here. It felt like the fire was right under my feet. My eyes stung and I glanced back towards the rear. It seemed like it was clearer that way. There was an ear-piercing scream coming from somewhere beneath me. People below decks struggling to escape. I couldn't just stay here. I could grab a fire extinguisher, try to help others escape. Then I heard the sound of something popping beneath me, like a cork, followed by a loud hissing noise. The hissing increased in pitch, like a whistling kettle. I realised I needed to be anywhere but where I was currently standing. But by the time I'd started to run, a bright flash blinded me. Everything glowed orange, scorching me and lifting me off my feet. Ah! The moment I hit the water, it felt like I'd been slammed into concrete. I gasped, instantly inhaling water. The cold was indescribable. My muscles instantly seized, and for a moment my body couldn't move. My mind couldn't comprehend the sensation. Then my lungs burned and I choked, thrashing around as I tried to figure out which way was up. I tried to breathe, my brain refusing to accept I was underwater, only got another lungful of frigid ocean water. I'd expelled all the air in my lungs from my scream as the explosion threw me overboard. All I had was salt water, choking me. My whole body was sluggish, despite my panic. Nothing could ever have prepared me for this utter cold. I finally managed to orient myself. A deep orange glow pointed me to the surface. Fire. I gurgled, feeling like a lead weight was pulling me down. My clothing, meant for protection from the elements, was the absolute worst thing I could be wearing at this moment. I drove myself upwards, thrashing, flailing, desperate. I broke the surface, trying to suck down precious air. I almost threw up as I choked, spilling water from my lungs as I thrashed and flailed. Help! It took 2 full breaths to expel the water. I've never taken a breath in my life more glorious than the inrush of air that followed. I struggled, trying to orient myself. Where was the Sylvia? The cold was like a million knives digging into me. My clothing might as well have been an anchor dragging me into the surface. I tried to remember. What had June said? Don't panic. Get into a stable floating position. I'd not managed to get my life jacket on, and without it, floating was utterly laughable. And as for not panicking, I tried to tread water, pouring at the icy ocean. My limbs felt tight, my chest constricted, and my legs like they were moving through treacle. I screamed and yelped, choking as gobfuls of water splashed into my mouth. I frantically tried to keep my head above the water. My one mercy was the ocean was relatively calm. It gave me enough visibility to spy an expanse of white nearby. Ice. I had no idea if it was thick enough to support my weight, but I no longer cared. I started to weakly paddle towards it. Every movement was agony. Each time I poured at the water, I felt like my arms were trying to cut through tar. I just wanted to stop, to float, to sleep. Every breath I took was choked by water splashing into my face. The ocean waves washed over and around me. I couldn't tell if they were carrying me further away from the ice. My strokes slowed, my breathing laboured and my legs burned in agony. The cold alone was torture, the worst pain I ever experienced, more than even my thunderclaps. When every ounce of warmth was sucked out of you, numbing your limbs, leaving you wondering if your arms and legs were even still there. All I wanted was to stop. Close my eyes. Inch by inch, in constant suffering, the ice drew closer until, with all the strength I could muster, I reached for it and dug my stubby claws into it. The ice was just about chest level. Both my hands were planted on the surface, pulling my chest against the edge. All I needed now was to pull myself up and onto the cold, but at least dry, surface. My breathing slowed. My eyelids felt heavy. If I'd allowed them to close, I wasn't sure I'd ever open them again. My claws clung to the ice. If it weren't for the layer of snow providing friction, I'd have simply slid off to sink into the depths. I pulled. My body ached, my muscles screamed, and I did too. Tears poured from my eyes. Or at least I think they did. It's hard to tell when you're soaked to the bone. My ears rang, every sinew strained to yank my body out of the water. First, my chest. The weight of my soaking clothes amplified as I left the water. Then my hips as I scrambled onto the snow, crawling until I was finally fully out. My panting, heaving breaths were the only noise apart from the waves. The snow beneath me, cold as it was, might as well have been a heated blanket compared to the Arctic Ocean. Gradually, the wind started to pick up. Light snow turned to flurries, turned to a howling wall of ice. My body quaked. My teeth chattered. Everything hurt. All I wanted was to close my eyes and just sleep. I didn't even particularly care if I woke up. No, I had to get up. Get up. Fuck, it hurts. I took everything I had to force myself to my knees, then finally to my paws. I swayed, trying to take stock. I couldn't hear anything except the wind, nor could I see any sign of the Sylvia. No glow of fire, no sound of engines. Hello? Anyone? Nothing but silence. No cries for help, screams, shouts in return. The burst of panic in my chest dispelled my fatigue as I spun around, trying to get my bearings. Hello? Anyone there? I cut my hands around my muzzle and screamed into the white. Panic jolted through me. Just Sylvia had exploded and no one else was alive. Hey! Is anyone there? I'm here! Oh fuck, oh fuck. Please, I can't be stranded. I continued screaming, my voice becoming increasingly shrill and desperate. I scanned the darkness beyond the white flurries for something, anything that might be life. A light, a flare. Light, of course. I reached into my pocket, feeling a sense of relief when it closed around the sturdy torch June had given me back during the blackout. Thank Christ I kept it. I flashed it around me, continuing to scream and shout for help. I had no idea how far the beam would travel in these conditions, at least I wasn't in near total darkness. Then I heard it. It was subtle at first, almost inaudible against the buffed-in wind. Then it sounded again. I could have sworn it was a voice, distant, faint. With a final despairing look around for any possible evidence of my former crewmates, the Sylvia, I turned, pricking my ears and pointing them this way and that to pinpoint the source of the sound. Trudging through the snow, I felt my body weaken. The wind and snow seemed to suck the warmth from me. Every minute that passed left me less able to move. My steps shortened and slowed. My eyes felt heavier. The voice, or whatever it was, faded. I continued on regardless in the direction I was moving. Because really, what else could I do? Oh God. Now we're both going to be lost out here, and marked and buried, and one Mum passes, and loved. One step, another. My hips and legs hurt. My paws were numb. How long had I been walking now? How far was I from where I'd started? Stupid. I shouldn't have moved. Now, even if there were any survivors, they'd have no chance of finding me. Just when it felt like my knees were going to finally give, plunging me face first in the endless white, I heard another noise. Different from the first. It sounded big. I stopped in my tracks, straining my ears once more, trying to listen for it again. As I listened, the winds around me started to subside. The snow eased and my line of sight expanded, giving me a better view of my surroundings. This isn't possible. As the blizzard eased, she came into view, and for a moment everything else fell away. The groaning of metal sounded once more, like she was a wounded beast crying out in pain. I'd found her. I'd found the Arran. There were no signs of life, no lights, no movement that I could see. I noticed a snow mound piled up against her stern. There was nothing else I could see along her hull that would allow me to get aboard, so I began making my way there. The snow mound wasn't easy to climb, very clearly had time to settle into a natural ramp. I scrambled up on my hands and knees, my whole body shaking violently and my eyes heavy with fatigue. And finally, I reached the bulwark and dragged myself over it onto the deck. I wasn't entirely sure what I expected to see. Devastation, holes in the hull, maybe even bodies. But besides the layer of snow and ice and the groaning of the equipment under the weight of 2 years of neglect, it seemed almost normal. Only one broken window marred an otherwise shockingly pristine scene. And part of me found that more concerning, if anything. But for now, I couldn't think on it. I needed shelter, warmth. I spied an open door leading inside, creaking and swaying in the breeze. With each passing moment, the hope of survivors faded. Once inside, I closed the door behind me, hoping to keep some of the frigid wind out. Hello? Is anyone here? Please, someone help me! Only the sound of the wind outside, the rattling of equipment and the sounds of doors rhythmically slamming in the breeze answered me. I never felt so cold in my life. My nose felt like a lump of ice, my paws were numb, my hands were tucked under my arms, hugging myself in the vain hope of warming myself. Okay, Garrett, first things first, find warmth. But on the ship this huge, where would I even start looking? No power meant no central heating. My clothing felt like a lead weight on me. Soaked through as I was, my clothing was far more of a hindrance to getting warm at this point. I started to strip, my hands barely able to unlace my boots or unzip my jacket. They were shaking so violently. Once naked, I tried to shake off what I could. While the ice-cold water wasn't directly sucking warmth from me anymore, even the soft breeze inside the ship was enough to cause me to shiver. I needed alternative clothing, a blanket, something. A ship this size must have a huge kitchen and probably gas stoves. If the crew had survived for a while, they might have gathered supplies in a central place, like the mess hall or below decks. No, not now. My eye burned, forced me to lean against the wall as I clamped a hand over it, then fumbled at my sodden clothes in my pocket. Wait, where is it? I pulled out both bottles and squinted at them, tears welling up as the pain made me grip my teeth. Fuck. Neither is the proxymetacane. They're both diclofenac. My heart dropped. I must have picked up 2 bottles of the diclo by accident. With an angry snarl, I shoved one back in my pocket, then screwed the other, forced my eye open and squeezed. The colder liquid, that I'd even cooler on account of being soaked in frigid seawater, soothed the pain on contact. My eye still burned. I'd have no choice but to wait for it to kick in. Squinting through the pain, I scanned for signs, maps or directions somewhere that could hold something useful. The walls were a mess of warnings, notices, signs about hard hats or hazards. I did find directions. Mess hall and hospital. I continued a bit further and saw a set of icy-looking steps leading down to pitch darkness. The stairs were barely wide enough for 2 people. The bottom, my light cord is signed on the wall. Engine room. Clothes. I needed clothes. From those 3 possibilities, the hospital seemed like the best shot. If I could only find blankets, it was better than nothing. The hospital was fortunately signposted pretty heavily. I had to climb a set of icy steps to reach it, my paws nearly sliding out from under me. I clung to the handrail for dear life as I made my way up. On my way, I continued to call out. Only the soft wail of the wind blowing through the interior answered me. When I arrived, the door was plain and unassuming. It was marked with a green cross and hospital. Just before I gripped the handle, a thought struck me. Gale. Tabby. Their mum was the ship's doctor. What if I found her? I hadn't found any of the bodies so far, but that was no guarantee. Besides, I couldn't think of many places on board where I'd be more likely to find dead people. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath and let myself in. Is anyone there? Nothing, of course. Next the door was a desk with old faded papers scattered on them. A PC, its screen covered with a layer of frost, stood silently. Beyond the desk was a set of dishevelled beds. Fortunately, they were empty. I sat my soaked clothes onto a nearby table and started pulling blankets off the nearby bed. It was chilly but dry. I wrapped one tightly around my shoulders, another around my waist like an absurd skirt. Already I felt a little better. With the intense chill softened by the blankets, I felt more able to look around. I stepped carefully around the desk, examining some of the papers strewn around. Most of them had deteriorated too much to be legible. In all honesty, I didn't really know what I was expected. Bodies, maybe? The total lack of any signs of the crew was gnawing at me. There were a few shelves and some fridges full of drugs and medicines. I wonder if they have any proxy. It was a long shot. My stinging eye decided for me that it was at least worth a look. I tried the fridges first, but I was quickly overwhelmed by an onslaught of unfamiliar drug names. When I examined the vials, a lot of them were misted with frost, the clear liquid within seemingly unchanged. With increasing frustration, I checked each vial, bringing it up to my torch before sliding it back. No proxy, just lots of drugs I had no idea the purpose of. This was a waste of time. I cursed and staggered back, pressing my back against the wall to try and stay upright. How much time had I wasted? I needed a heat source. My eye could wait. But I was still confused at the lack of any presence on board. Did they evacuate? If so, where? I glanced at the desk with a computer, stacks of papers strewn across the desk. Amongst the ruined paper and notes, one piece caught my eye. It was better preserved than the rest, although still mostly obscured by damp. The ink had faded or smudged beyond legibility. I gently scooped it up, afraid it would turn to mush in my hands. It was handwritten, faded, but parts were still legible. Staff are, with increasing regularity. Shifts are often operating at reduced, much as half strength. I informed Dixon that my staff are overworked as it is, but she insisted we continue with the agreed upon plan. Assuming the situation does not worsen, which we have enough chlorpromazine and to last another 6 weeks. Diazepam is nearly exhausted, and I would strongly object to the widespread use of flunitrazepam, particularly due to its potential for abuse. Require contact with mainland to discuss possible causes. But I'm lodging a formal complaint about Captain McGregor's insistence on continuing despite. Morale is hard enough to maintain without stalking the corridors and shouting. Not much use. Apart from diazepam, I didn't recognise any of the drugs named. It seemed clear a medical professional wrote this, maybe even Dr. Waters herself. In any case, there wasn't much I could glean from it. I'd wasted enough time. I could barely stand anymore. I needed to find warmth, for I lost consciousness. Forcing myself upright, I staggered to the door, my mind already searching for where to go next. Check out the mess hall. The doors leading to the mess hall were closed tightly. At first I thought it was locked. After pushing against it, I realised something on the other side was leaning against it. With a shove that would probably be near effortless had I been in a better state, the door creaked open on iced hinges. I slipped my body into the crack, for once thankful for my skinny frame. Hello? Nothing. Around me, my voice echoed amongst the empty tables, strewn with what looked like the remains of food tins, packs of snacks, water bottles and drinks cans. I paused, giving the air a sniff. As much as my nose hurt from the frost nip, I still had my sense of smell at least. Part of me braced for the scent of death, of any of the Arran crew's remains. But the air only carried a faint musty smell, the smell of clothes left in a humid closet for a long time, which was a relief. With another shove, I squeezed myself through the door. It was almost pitch black. Only the tiniest amount of moonlight was making it through the thoroughly frosted-over windows. As I surveyed the room, it quickly became clear this had been a shelter of some kind. Makeshift beds were scattered on the floor along with utensils, but where was everyone? This place had clearly been used by people waiting for rescue. There's no sign of bodies. I couldn't help but feel the state of the place suggested its occupants had left in a hurry. But if so, where? All the doors were closed, presumably to keep the heat in. There were still boxes of cans, tins and packets of food. No, I had to stop this. I had more pressing needs. I needed a working heater to warm up. I paced down the row of repurposed tables and benches, flipped over either to form blanket-covered one-person shelters, or possibly in a fight. It was difficult to tell from the general disarray. My dread grew as I failed to spot anything like a heater, not even a barrel with wood. How the hell had they kept warm? That was when I noticed the shutter separating the dining area from the adjacent room. Of course, the kitchen. Maybe I had gas stoves? Surely a gas stove and some matches would warm me up, even for just a little while, to stave off the frostbite, to keep me awake. I staggered the door next to the shutter, my teeth clattering, and turned the handle. Bloody fucking hell! I turned, then pulled and finally slammed my shoulder against it, but it didn't move. I doubted my skinny frame would have budged it, even though I wasn't near collapse. I leaned against the door, eyes closed and panting with exertion. What I wouldn't give to be able to just curl up and sleep right now. There were bedrolls all around me. The kitchen was out of the question. The shutter looked, if anything, even more impregnable. How much time had I wasted? My eye no longer hurt, thankfully, but I couldn't tell if it was because the diclo kicked in or the general pain in my body had made it less noticeable. Pushing myself upright, I staggered back to the entrance. This place had been a waste of time. Now I didn't know if I had it in me to try somewhere else. Every step took effort. My teeth chattered and I could barely keep my eyes open. In my daze, I could only think of one place left I might find something to warm me up. The ship's stores, somewhere in the lower decks. Problem is, I had no idea where to go or where to look. So I slowly made my way down the stairs, gripping the rail for dear life in case my trembling knees gave way. I could only guess. I shuffled, half awake through dark corridors. My torch beam vibrated violently as my hand shook. I don't know how long I wandered, spending every ounce of strength to stay upright, when I briefly was pulled back into lucidity. What the fuck? It took a moment for my cold adult brain to register what I was seeing. It seemed like a riot took place here. And the door. What language was that? There was nothing to indicate what was behind the door, no signs or labels beside the spray paint. And yet, I knew it had to be a warning. I tried to swallow, my throat was dry and my body was quaking violently. Who was that? On the edge of my hearing. A voice? Calling out. Connor? The voice seemed so distant, yet I could swear it was almost next to me, muffled. And that's when I realised. Mum? I moved to the door, pressing my cheek to the cold metal and straining to hear. Mum, are you there? It's me. I'm here. I'm alive. I pounded on the door. She was so close I could hear her voice. I'm here. Just a shout if you can hear. The muffled voice put my fur on end, but it had to be her. I hammered on the door. I didn't even notice the tears streaming down my cheeks. She needed to know. She couldn't be left wondering. My vision clouded. My knees folded and I slid down the door, the flashlight clattering away from me as I fell sideways, shivering. Someone, a woman, was calling me. I no longer recognized the voice. She was gone. I was alone. I just wanted to sleep and never have to wake up. I'm here. Please. Take me home. Miracle. Can't believe. Maybe okay? No. Hypothermia. I heard voices. Raised, I think, sometimes frantic, sometimes angry. For fuck's sake, couldn't Connor and Clyde take this outside for once? The last thing either me or Mum needed was to listen to them screaming at each other. What do we do now? I should never have. This is all your fault. Stop this, it isn't helping. Then as my head broke the surface of calm water, the sounds came through fully, as did the pain. My very bones ached. My skin felt like it was scalded, like a million needles were poking me. My nose felt like a burning lump of coal. The combined pain forced a soft groan from my chest. The voices quickly stopped for a moment. Garrett, you're awake! I forced open my bleary eyes. My one good eye took a moment to focus on the figure hovering over me. It was unusually dark, with a warm flickering light. Garrett, can you hear me? Can you talk? I tried to speak, but all I could manage was another soft moan. Finally, I could see the figure clearly. We were in the mess hall, being tidied up a little. The small candle heat has been lit. A gas lantern was hissing away, giving the room a dim but warm orange glow. Damn, kid, you're tougher than you look. I was shaken from my groggy stupor by a familiar booming voice. Dana moved in my field of vision beside Gail, giving me a surprisingly warm smile coming from her. Welcome back to the land of the living. Behind Gail was the rest of the group. Gail was beaming at me with relief, as was Stefan. Beside me, my clothes had been laid over a table with a lantern nearby. "We found your clothes in the hospital. It's what clued us in that you must have been somewhere on the ship." I remembered. I was still draped in the blankets from the hospital, but also I felt softness underneath. Realised I'd been laid out on a mattress on the floor between two overturned dining tables. Tabby looked sour, as did Aaron, who were both standing off away from the main group. I recalled our argument on the Sylvia. Either they held a grudge against me or I'd missed yet another shitstorm. Sharif, June, Joseph and Rufus were standing in pairs. June and Joseph on one side, naturally. Even from here I could see Sharif and Joseph were fuming. Maybe I should just slip it back into sweet unconsciousness, let whatever this was work itself out. "It's good to see you survived as well, Garrett. If I may ask." "No, you may not. He needs rest." "I'll give him a break, will you? He nearly died." "I nearly died?" It seemed whatever tension in the room was momentarily lifted as they crowded closer. Slowly I forced myself to my paws, ignoring the protests of Gale. Dana offered me an arm and hauled me up. "How did you find your way here? We thought you'd been killed in the Sylvia explosion." "I don't know. I got lost in the blizzard, and it just cleared up." "How did I get here?" Well, I thought about it. I'd heard something. Had someone called out to me? There's no use. The more I tried to recall, the further away the memories drifted, like my fingers were brushing the edges of something floating on water. The more I reached for it, the more I pushed it away. As did we. It seems the blizzard dissipated and saved all of us. Look, as much as I'd love to go over what we've already been through. His tone was sharp, impatient. His eyes met mine. I caught a brief glint of something unpleasant. We still need to decide how to deal with this situation. The tension before came back with a vengeance. Even Rufus and Dana, not normally ones to shy from confrontation, looked uncomfortable. "I need to figure out how we got in this mess." I cringed, expecting her to look at me, but her eyes were firmly on Joseph. "Enough, Tabby. There's no time to start throwing around blame." "The perfect fucking time. I told you all that fucking shit was the death trap, and now look where we are." "Tabby, I'm so..." "Shut up. I don't want to hear any excuses from either of you. Did you even get the fucking radio working again before the ship went down?" An awful silence settled. Even Joseph seemed taken aback. "Oh well?" I shuddered. I'd heard that tone before, when he squared up to Sharif. The captain would have gotten a message off, I'm sure." "You didn't answer a question." The others, Gale and Dana excluded, now pressed around them. Cold, accusing glares forcing the pair to take a step backwards. "It was my responsibility. I will take blame." "No, it wasn't. You did..." "It was my responsibility." His tone turned sharp, shooting June a look. "Yes, well, you're starting to answer the god-fucking damn question. Did you get the radio fixed, yes or no?" "Guys," I croaked, struggling to stay on my feet. They didn't budge. I made to move toward them, but Dana put an arm out, meeting my gaze. She gave me a firm shake of her head. Gale looked back and forth, frantic, but Dana gave her a hard stare. It seemed she wanted an answer to the question too. "No." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. The mutinous glare sent a chill through me worse than any blizzard. "So, what you are saying?" Sharif spoke slowly, carefully. I heard enough of his tone to know he was seething. "Is that not only have we not sent any distress message, but since GPS was down for hours before she sank, any rescue sent could be miles off to Sylvia's actual last position. Am I correct?" Joseph met his stare evenly. Not for the first time that I envy his steel nerves. He was afraid he hid it well. "Yes." Another terrible silence followed. "So, now what?" I blurted out with really thinking, but it really seemed to pop the bubble of tension had been building. A little. "Well, I would suggest we locate as many supplies as we can. Food and water, matches, fuel. Now wait a second there. Who put you in charge? Because you ain't been paying attention, we're not on the goddamn expedition anymore. I did not put myself in charge. I merely... Oh yeah, another thing. Doesn't anyone find it convenient we just happen to stumble on the Aaron? I have no idea what you... His normally cool and controlled aura slips. He glanced around the hostile gazes. I told you guys he's up to something. I didn't believe that it was just an alternative route bullshit from the start. We set off on this new route of yours, and bam, we sailed right to the Aaron. Coincidence? I told all of you the route was the most likely course. I explained all of this to you. You seriously believe it's extraordinary that... What is that weird noise? Everyone just calm down. This isn't helping. Oh, she's right. We need to work together. Oh, shut up, Gail. You're the only reason I'm even here. Tabby, that is not fair. It was like a dentist drill to the back of my skull. Not even a noise, really. More like a vibration. Every time I tried to pinpoint it with my ears, it seemed to move. Guys, don't blame around is only... And why are we supposed to... be methodical about this? Louder and louder. But also... still not quite there. I covered my ears, trying to block it out. But now it felt like it was coming from inside my own head. Where is that coming from? The other's voices faded into background noise. I screwed my eyes shut, trying to block it out. Like a giant mosquito had burrowed into my brain. Was I going to be trapped here? Die here? A miserable, slow and lonely death with these people as my only company? Mum, she'd be completely alone. Just wanted someone to take me home. God, what is that fucking noise? Shit. I opened my eyes and looked at the others who had stopped bickering to stare at me with a mixture of concern and disturbed looks. Garrett? She moved closer, placing her hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry, I just... Can't anyone else hear? And then I realised it was gone. Wherever noise had been there was only the sound of the wind outside, the dull creaking and groaning of the ship, and the awkward silence of our motley group. You should rest. You might still be suffering from hypothermia. To be honest, sounded like a great idea. Felt like I could sleep standing up at this point. Look, Sharif is right. We should get ourselves set up to potentially several days here at least. A few unhappy murmurs, but no one objected. I'm going to look for Alex. Stefan, for Christ's sake. Fuck you. None of you thought the Arrow was still afloat, but here we are. I was right. You do what you want. I'm going to search this place until I find him. Before anyone could interject, he turned and stormed out of the room, his paw steps fading into the distance. Well, I mean, we're here, right? This is why we came out here. The rest of us exchanged uncomfortable looks. I could see that everyone else was thinking the same thing. We all had someone on this hulk. Listen. If you guys want to search your loved ones, why don't me and Joseph look for supplies and bring them here? A few guilty looks were exchanged as they recalled how they'd been at her and Joseph's throats just minutes earlier, but Sharif spoke for them all. That's a splendid idea. With everyone now left to their own devices, I was left to watch as people slowly trickled out until I was on my own. I moved gingerly over to my clothes and gripped the fabric. They dried surprisingly well. I wasn't sure the inside of my boots would have had a chance to dry properly. But I'd still rather be in mostly dry and warm clothes than these blankets. As I got dressed, I could hear Joseph and June talking from the far side of the mess hall, huddled together and talking in hushed tones. That was when I recalled the conversation between them on the Sylvia, where they'd seemed to be discussing blackmail and sabotage. On the one hand, this might be an opportunity to get their side of the story while no one else was around. But on the other, well, no one else was around, if I probed too deeply. Part of me thought it was silly to be so paranoid, or if I'd heard was even slightly accurate, it's possible the pair were involved in something shady, maybe even criminal. Maybe I'd better off waiting until they were separated. Talking to one of them might be more fruitful than trying to interrogate them both. Either of them might feel pressure to keep quiet in the presence of the other. Or rather June would. I couldn't imagine Joseph being pressured by anyone. That said, I'd seen him back on the Sylvia, almost in tears. I'd imagine that's a sight few others could claim to have seen. Underneath that granite facade, he clearly had a heart. I decided confronting them now was a bad idea. I'd rather wait till I could speak to one of them alone. With nothing left for me here, I decided to take a look around the ship. Where do I go? Let's check out the bridge. I don't know, it seems like the first place we should go to. As I approached the door to the bridge, I could hear murmuring. The door had a small window that had been shattered, leaving broken glass scattered all over the floor. As my boots crunched the glass, the murmuring stopped. I pushed the door open and saw two pairs of accusing eyes glaring back at me. Oh, perfect. Aaron and Tabby. Exactly what I wanted to see right now. The bridge itself looked wrecked. Everything was damaged as far as I could tell, but not from neglect or the elements. It looked like a fight had taken place. Each station had banks of instruments and computer screens, all now blank and silent. Layers of frost and ice had covered them, burying much of their devices. There's a loud groan of metal. Up here the metallic creaking felt louder than ever. I felt the vibrations in my very bones. It's no use. Everything is smashed. I bristled his accusatory tone, but said nothing. I really did not want to start a fight. Swallowing my pride, I made my way over to them, pausing as my boots once again crunched broken glass from the nearby consoles. I rated a number on this place. Don't think there's a single station that isn't totaled. So I see. There was an awkward silence. The pair of them shuffled uncomfortably. Tabby in particular seemed like she's going to speak a couple of times, while seemingly having second thoughts. Fuck this. I'm just going to get this over with. Look, if you have anything you want to say to me, now's the fucking time. You want to blame me for voting to continue, eh? Aaron, for his part, looked even more uncomfortable and said nothing. Tabby, on the other hand. Is all of this worth it? To see all of this? She stretched her arms out, gesturing at the tomb-like command centre. Another eerie groan from the ship punctuated her point. Help you sleep? Because I could have happily gone the rest of my life not seeing this place. That isn't fair. You think I wanted this to happen? Who cares what you wanted? You saw this, Sylvia. Hell, you probably had a better idea what fucking shit heap it was than any of us. Stefan, I can understand. He's fucking obsessed. But you hate your brother. I don't see... Don't. My tail curled and lips trembled as I struggled to contain a growl. Aaron noticed and took a small step back. Tabby stood her ground, but she lapsed into silence, staring me down. After a pause, she turned and stormed off towards the bridge wing. I took a second to settle myself. My blood raced and my limbs trembled. In. Count to 3. Hold. Count to 4. Out. So, we came here to see if the radio worked. I blinked, suddenly remembering he was here. He still looked uneasy, watching me while his leg twitched. With a deep breath, I relaxed, rubbing my eyes. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. The bad news is, it's wrecked. Of course it was. Wrecked. Someone smashed the shit out of it. It wasn't an accident, that much I can tell you. You sure? Take a look for yourself. He led me toward the side room where its door had been smashed in. Its handle and lock were missing, leaving a ragged hole. The room itself was pretty cramped and, much like everywhere else, covered in a layer of frost. Snow had built up in piles in the corners of the room. Much of the room was taken up by banks of equipment. It looked pretty modern. At least, it would have if not for the massive chunks taken out of it. It was hard to see through the layer of snow, but I could make out pieces of the equipment on the floor. I gave a low whistle. See what I mean? Almost looks like someone went at it with an axe or something. Yeah, but why? We both stood and stared at it in silence for a while, pondering the ramifications. Actually, yes, remembered. You're an electrical engineer, yeah? So you could fix it? Electrician. I mostly deal with wiring, fuses, I passed my torch beam over the wreckage. I don't know, man. I could take a look, but I'm no miracle worker. There's a chance? I thought hard, pondering. I didn't know anything about radios. There was a manual if someone here knew more about them. Guess. Maybe Joseph would know about radios. I could ask him. Rufus is ex-army. He might... I gave him a look. Okay, yeah. Maybe not Rufus. If I needed help fixing the machine gun, maybe. This strikes me as a little out of his wheelhouse. In any case, it's something to keep in mind. Besides, it needs powering. Batteries? Well, that are the mains. I doubt the generator's in much better condition. Again, Joseph might know more. I think after Sylvia, no one's going to be really sure with him having a hand in fixing anything. Can't argue with that. Tabby, however. He gave me a quizzical look, then a look of dawning realization. Ah, of course, she's a mechanic. Can't hurt to ask. Although, given our argument earlier, there was a non-zero chance it absolutely could hurt. Tabby was staring out of the bridge wing window. From here I could make out the deck of the Arran, coated in snow. It was the first time I could see the Arran from this angle. If I hadn't already seen her state from the inside, she'd look almost functional. Tabby didn't react to our approach, coldly staring off into the distance. Tabby? She didn't move. She grunted in acknowledgement. We were thinking, if Garrett could fix the radio, and if you could fix the generator, we might get a message off. She's quiet a moment before turning to look at me with a strangely quizzical expression. Do you really think you could fix it? I can't promise, but I suppose I can try. But without power, it's a moot point anyway. I thought about it, but a generator for a ship this size is probably more electrical than mechanical. Sounds more complex than anything I've worked on before. I fix cars, not giant ship engines. Her tone sounded a bit defensive, like she was looking for excuses. I understand that, but you could try. If it's a no-go, then we can think of something else. But if we get main power, it'd make a lot of stuff easier, right? I mean, at least we might get the lights on, right? I nearly strained something, resisting the urge to strangle him. I honestly couldn't tell which of the pair had less tact. At least Tabby was deliberately an arsehole. The scowl she gave him seemed to clue him in. What I meant to say... Shut it. I'm scared of the dark, so naturally I've been all in going to the deepest, darkest part of the ship, clawing into the machines there, and I feel like I'm around with nothing but a flashlight. Isn't that what you're asking? We both exchanged looks. Maybe to either of us, with the right knowledge, it would have been daunting. But someone petrified in the dark is a nightmare scenario. I'm not asking you to do anything you don't want. I'm just asking you to be willing to try, that's all. I don't see a difference, Garrett. She looked away, hugging herself, scraping the floor with her hoof absently and biting her lip. I saw Aaron shift beside me and gave him my best shut up look. I think about it, okay? No promises. I nodded, pleased to have at least gotten that much. With nothing left to do here, I gave both of them a curt nod and turned to the stairs leading back down. The crew cabins were spread across 2 decks. Some looked normal, almost untouched by time. Others were trashed, the doors smashed in or hanging off hinges while the contents of the rooms were in disarray. My stomach clenched and I realised Connor's cabin was somewhere here. The place he'd spent his final days. There were no names on any of the cabins, only numbers. I didn't even know where to start as I moved between the rows of doors, peeking into the open ones and being immediately put off by the mess within. It had been 9 years since I'd seen him. He'd have been 29. If I even found his body, would I recognise it? Even after 2 years. I felt nauseous just thinking about it. I saw what looked like dark stains on some of the walls. Maybe all blood stains? It's hard to say. My nose couldn't detect anything, but then, after this long, dried blood would be undetectable by scent. I was shaken in my thoughts by the sound of something moving. My heart leapt into my throat and I froze. Swallowing, I crept closer. I realised it was someone rifling through drawers, the sounds of cupboards being opened and ransacked. I heard what sounded like a loud exhale. I carefully approached the door, preparing to look around. Ah! I reeled, rubbing my nose. He stumbled back before collapsing onto his backside on the floor. The fuck, Garrett? Sorry. I pinched my nose, dabbing at my nostrils for signs of blood, and gave him a chagrined smile as he gazed up at me, first with a furious look, then he softened when he saw it was me. Okay, I'm going to you trying to scare me deliberately. I offered a hand and pulled him upright. Sorry, I did read it. I spoke thickly, pinching my nose. I didn't seem to be bleeding, fortunately. You should maybe consider that bell idea. Fuck you. He gave a little smirk, but then his face fell. So about Alex, any luck? No, not. He trailed off. I swallowed. Should I put my hand on his shoulder? Should I tell him to keep looking? Was he starting to understand that Alex was almost certainly... I take it you're looking for your brother? Carl, right? Connor. I suppose I was. I couldn't meet his gaze, but it seemed I really was as easy to read as people had said. Searching 3 cabins on this side. He pointed back the way I'd come, indicating the open cabin doors on the left wall. And I didn't see anything belong to a Connor, but you're welcome to give them another look. Aye? Well, thanks. He unexpectedly placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed, giving me a sympathetic smile. For a brief moment my chest felt warm. I considered asking him to help me look, just to avoid the loneliness. Just so I didn't have to find Connor alone. But in a moment he was gone. I glanced back at the room Stefan had already ransacked. There was a bitter taste in my mouth. My heart was racing. I wandered down to the first cabins. The cabin opposite the one Stefan had already rummaged through seemed in better condition. With a deep breath to calm my nerves, I stepped inside. The place was surprisingly tidy and clean. Whatever riot had taken place hadn't touched this cabin. Nor, it seemed, had Stefan, yet. Didn't even know where to begin, nor even what I was looking for, really. I was less concerned about finding Connor's body, given no one else seemed to be around. Connor wasn't the type to keep a diary, at least not as long as I'd known him. In fact, he was the type to find it stupid and a waste of time. So I started looking over any clothing I could find, any books, files or papers, anything I thought might have a name on it. The first cabin was devoid of anything useful. Room by room I advanced along the row, sticking to the side Stefan had yet to ransack. The 5th cabin along was where I found it. It was crumpled up and thrown into the desk. It was pretty fragile from all the frost and moisture, but it was amazingly still legible. See, that glitch in the GPS was unacceptable. You forced my hand in taking the beacons offline. I don't know if you've been speaking to Hagen behind my back for any further glitches, and I know who to look for. You're in this as much as we are. Destroy this note, and keep an eye on you. It took a moment for me to absorb what I was reading, then it struck me like a brick to the face. C. Connor? Was this a threat? Blackmail? Connor was a mechanic. Would he be involved with the GPS? Questions whirled in my mind, the point I didn't hear a voice pipe up from the door until it was right behind me. Garrett? I jumped, clutching my chest. Stefan was watching me with a concerned look. Are you okay? You seem to be really focused on something. Yeah. Without thinking, I slipped the note in my pocket as subtly as I could. I thought I saw Connor's name on something, but it turned out to be nothing. Stefan gave me an odd look, his eyes glancing past me to the desk. It was completely bare. Right. Oh, what about you? Any, I wanted to get off the topic quickly, but nearly blurted out, any luck, as though discovering his brother's corpse was a jackpot or something. I gestured pathetically, imploring him to understand my meaning. No. A lot of the cabins are trashed already. I thought the same as you, maybe finding something in his name, but nothing. So what do you think happened? Huh? To the Aaron? Yeah, but also about this whole thing. The expedition. You don't think it's convenient we ran straight in the Aaron within days of starting on this expedition? I'm telling you, Sharif knows more than he's letting on. Are you also accusing him of setting fire to the Sylvia? An odd look passed over his face. Couldn't quite catch it, but I could swear his eyes darted to the door. do you think happened on the Sylvia? I don't know. I was on deck when it went up, and the fire started beneath me, near the front and to the starboard? I mean the right-hand side of the ship below decks. That's pretty specific. It's hard to mistake the source of the fire when the explosion was right underneath me. When I think about it, wasn't a laundry room about there? Maybe someone left a load of laundry in the tumble dryer. Yeah. He was silent for a moment. Listen, I'm going to keep searching. Yeah, good luck. I think I'm going to look elsewhere. You giving up? I doubt I'll find his body here, and I'm kind of getting creeped out by rooting into other people's stuff like this. His expression flickered. Without a word, he turned and marched off to continue his search. Once he was gone, I felt the note in my pocket. Could Connor be involved with whatever had happened here? I decided to keep this to myself for now, at least until I knew more. The laboratories were nestled between a bunch of machinery and storerooms. Inside, Rufus was surveying the room. It was difficult to figure out his expression, but he seemed lost in thought. On the other side of the room, Sharif was peering at the stone object sitting on the counter, look of intense concentration on his face. The rest of the laboratory seemed reasonably intact, except for some paraphernalia scattered on the floor. Rufus? I approached him, drawing his gaze for a moment. He acknowledged me with a nod. Damn this thing, he muttered, scanning the room. It was then I noticed the stone object Sharif was studying wasn't the only one. All over the room boxes stood, some empty, some half filled with packing material, but some had what looked like stone-carved things. Some lay on the counters, a bizarre array of shapes and sizes, some the size of pebbles, others large enough it would require a couple of people to lift. They were clearly not natural, though they seemingly all had unique shape. They were clearly handmade. Gives me the creeps, he growled under his breath. I had to admit it was unsettling to me too. Any idea what these are? Another one. Well, Sharif seems to be into them. He jerked his head in his direction. It was odd seeing him like this. Even in the current situation, he struck me as someone who didn't scare easily. He was clearly keeping his distance, watching the carvings carefully. You okay? He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on one of the carvings nearby, a large one covered in faded symbols. Rufus? Oh, fine. He never took his eyes off the sculpture, and he didn't add anything more. We stood in silence for a while. I could feel the discomfort radiating off of him, like he wanted to run or smash something, but he's resisting the urge. I won't lie, his clear discomfort was worse than my own. The stone objects were unsettling to look at. I slowly made my way around the lab benches towards Sharif. He was still peering closely at one of the stone objects, carefully brushing its surface with the fingers he traced some etching on its surface. He seemed so focused I almost decided against trying to get his attention, but he seemed to snap out of it when he saw me. Oh, Garrett, my apologies, I was distracted. It's fine, no worries. What is that? I nodded at the rock. Fascinating, isn't it? I don't recognize the symbols or script. It's possible it's an entirely new culture. I gave him an odd look. His excitement almost mirrored Stefan's when he's talked about aliens or whatever. Almost. See here? He beckoned me closer, suddenly giddy in a way I couldn't have imagined him being. The script is nothing like I've seen before. The symbols all seem to have common motifs. Worshipping, celebrating, placing of gifts. Worshipping who? I don't know, but each sculpture seems to focus on a different figure. In fact, each stone seems subtly different from each other, yet similar within itself. Meaning? Each stone was likely carved and decorated by different people. It could be their individual offerings. But you said they're all worshipping different things, right? Or maybe different interpretations of the same god? Or perhaps a pantheon? What I wouldn't give for Hagen's notes. A loud throat clearing snapped out of his excitement. Rufus was glaring at us from across the room, tapping a finger against his folded arms. Perhaps later. He gave a dainty cough, straightened his jacket, and I noticed, tried to conceal a shiver, before walking back toward Rufus. Too convenient. Excuse me? You found a map that just so happened to lead us directly to the Aaron. Now that you're here, you find this weird shit. He gestured at the stone objects around us. You're like a kid in a candy store. I'm an anthropologist. You can't hold it against me that you're interested in a find like this. And I found the chart of the alternative course that the University Hager was conducting research for. It isn't as if I found it in a cave. After following for a couple of days, bam, we run right into her. Did you know where to find the Aaron all along? Are you accusing me of withholding information that could have saved the lives of people on this ship? I reckon there's just too many coincidences stacking up. Sharif bristled and folded his arms. His fists clenched by his sides like an involuntary backward step, eyes darting back and forth between them. Then stop cowering behind insinuation and state what you believe. I'm very much done listening to snide accusations. If you believe I've done something wrong, say it. His voice was low, hissing, his eyes burning to Rufus. For his part, the deer simply met his gaze, but didn't unfold his arms. He seemed to consider his words for a moment. Then, without a word, Rufus huffed, turning slowly as he unfolded his arms and sauntered out of the room. Immediately, a wave of relief washed over me. I glanced nervously at Sharif, expecting him to demand an answer or to offer a snide parting shot. But to my surprise, he simply glared. After Rufus was gone, he turned sharply and stormed out of another door leading to the opposite side of the ship. On the one hand, I was relieved they'd not come to blows. But on the other, my heart sank at the realization that what little cooperation we had was looking shaky by the moment. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A piece of paper sitting on a nearby table, separate from the other pieces scattered haphazardly about. It was handwritten in a vaguely legible scrawl. Blair, could you tell Hagen to stop coming down to the engineering decks without a reason? We keep finding him lurking in the access ways of the inner hull, scaring the shit out of my repair crews. He also hangs around like a weirdo, watching us work on the props and turbine, and muttering to himself while giving us the creepiest look you could imagine. I asked the captain, but word is he's locked himself up in his cabin and is using Dixon as personal goon and errand girl. Out of professional courtesy and because I don't want blood on my hands, I'm giving you a chance to talk sensibly before I involve her. Copper. Hagen. Sharif's friend and mentor. Also leader of the expedition, as I understood. Apparently he's a bit of an oddball. I pocketed the note. Wasn't really sure why. Maybe I could show it to Sharif, see what he thought of it. In any case, what's now for spending a moment longer in this creepy place? I turned and left through the same door Rufus had stormed out of. Lost for purpose, I wandered through the frosted hallways, shining my torch on signs, notices, doors. I no longer knew what I was even looking for. Something to take me home from this nightmare, perhaps. Voices up ahead shook me from my melancholy. Low murmurings echoed from somewhere up ahead. As I got closer, I recognised Sharif and Dana's voices. The surroundings began to look familiar too as I realised where I was. This place. Instantly I felt dread, just like in the laboratory around those weird stones. Last time I'd been here, I'd been at death's door. Garrett? She acknowledged me, arms folded as she stood beside Sharif, who was studying the door. His expression, unlike before, was one of concern. This is why you found you unresponsive. You're fortunate, Garrett. Everyone on the Sylvia can claim the same. Oh, it's locked, although I think the big X and warnings on it could have told us that. Warnings? You know what they say? It says do not open and death inside in Norwegian. You understand Norwegian? Oh, naturally, I learned it while studying with Tobias. Who? Professor Tobias Hagen. Apologies, I must not have said his first name to you. Whatever. What does it mean by death inside? Presumably hazardous materials, toxic or perhaps radioactive. Are you saying there's radioactive stuff in here? Immediately I took a step back and Dana flinched and backed away. Oh, I said perhaps. For the more likely possibilities, this could be where they've stored any deceased crew. That seems like a pretty intense warning for dead bodies. Even in an environment like this, improperly stored cadavers can be hazardous. In any event, without a key, we can only speculate. We stood in silence for a while. Even being near this thing made me want to run. It has been a while since we last gathered. We should return to the mess hall and plan our next steps. Without waiting for a response, he turned, the sounds of footsteps echoing into the distance. Oh, by the way, have you seen Stefan? I blinked, a little surprised by her question. Yeah, in the cabins. Why? How did he seem to you? Still obsessed with finding Alex. Why? She paused, glancing away as if considering. Nothing. And with that, she turned and followed after Sharif. I watched after her, frustration bubbling into evasiveness. Then I realised I was alone in front of this creepy door. I quickly decided to follow her. By the time we arrived at the mess hall, everyone else was there. People had clustered into groups. Joseph stood off by himself, stoic as usual. June hurried over, causing him to crack the smallest of smiles. Aaron was muttering with Tabby. They both glanced up as we entered for a moment before returning to their conversation. Wait, where's Stefan? Who cares? Aaron! What? I'm sick of his prattling. He wants to freeze to death looking for a dead man. Gale spluttered before launching into a furious tirade. Aaron was completely nonplussed, and Tabby finding to take Gale by the hand and pull her away, still fuming. Sharif locked eyes with Rufus, and I felt the anger pass between them before Sharif turned on his hoof and addressed the room. If I may have your attention. Slowly all eyes turned to him. This was not like on the Sylvia where he'd had a commanding presence. Mutinous looks burned into him. Thought I saw a brief ripple in his otherwise cool expression. Maybe a sense of potential situation brewing. We should discuss our next steps. Miss Keverin? He turned to June. Did you find much in the way of supplies? She exchanged a brief glance at Joseph, who, seeing his discomfort, spoke and said, Lots of water, crates of bottles, less fuel, but still enough for a while. As he spoke, he lifted a crate filled with litre bottles of water and dumped it on the counter, followed by another containing canisters of kerosene. I felt my hopes raised a little. We laid a crate on the floor and placed it heavily on the counter. Inside, a dozen battered cans rattled against each other. We found little food, maybe 2 days at most. The silence that followed was surreal. I could swear I could hear the gears turning in everyone's heads, the building crescendo that would follow. 2 days? Aaron, enough. The hair was livid. He didn't even try to contain the rapid tapping of his boot on the floor, the look of fury I think even Sharif was surprised by. Fuck you, this is all your fault, all of this. Sharif stood his ground, grimacing. This fucking ship has been missing 2 years, now we need to hope it's somebody found in 2 fucking days. If we ration, we could last a lot longer. And then what? Then you say you could fix the radio, Garrett. Now every eye was on me. I looked from face to face, a mix of curiosity and hopefulness on each expression. I said I could try. The radio was pretty smashed up, but if I could get the right tools... I can help. There are plenty of tools. Yeah, they won't pass on your help if you don't mind. Joseph snorted, taking a step toward him when June stepped between them, pleading with him to drop it. And I felt it, the burning in my eye. I closed it and cursed, reaching in my pocket. I placed the drop, slightly soothing the burning. The pain continued. Thankfully it wasn't a thunderclap. Gale seemed to notice me struggling. I tried to give a crooked smile and thumbs up to reassure her. I think we should rest on it first. How the hell are we supposed to sleep here? It's like a meat locker in here. I am not convinced sleeping is the best option right now. Look, we're all tired, even if some of us aren't willing to admit it. She gave Tabby a pointed look, who tutted and rolled her eyes but did not argue back. She briefly met my eyes, seemingly asking, silently, for my permission to use myself as another case in point. I grimaced. I didn't want to be a burden. And plus, Garrett nearly died a few hours ago. Good old Dana, always giving a fuck about diplomacy. And we all got woken up by fire and Sylvia singing. I think we could all stand a few hours to get some shut-eye. I will stand watch in that case. I will remain on bridge. We'll give a good view of our surroundings. There could be other survivors from the Sylvia. An awkward pause followed as we waited more from him, but Joseph simply stood, staring down Sharif. I can stay up too. I'm used to... No, you need sleep. He snapped at her, surprising not just the rest of us, but June herself. He paused, then deflated, closing his eyes and rubbing his face. I am sorry, June. I appreciate your offer, but I must insist you rest. You had a bad scare on the Sylvia. And I'll take second watch. A few exasperated groans went up. Typical of Rufus to use this as an opportunity to chest beat. Then I saw his expression. I couldn't place it. He was staring down Joseph, watching him closely. Joseph, for his part, continued to demonstrate his supernatural talent for hiding his true emotions. He met Rufus's gaze evenly, arms by his sides, seemingly unmoved. A tense few moments passed before Sharif, with a heavy sigh, pinched his brow with one hand while the other clenched and clenched at his side. Very well. If we are agreed, we can shelter for the remainder of the night. I cringed as I anticipated another round of insufferable bickering, but this time, amazingly, no one objected. I suggest we sleep here, in the mess hall. The crew already built shelters here, so... There's only enough for 5 people here. We all looked round the makeshift shelters. She was right. I'll take a cabin. Why is anyone left to object? Me too. Gail glanced at her sister before sighing. I guess I'm for the cabins too. Aaron shrugged, and before anyone could say anything, he stalked out, slamming the door behind him. A tense silence followed before Sharif cleared his throat. If Joseph is taking first watch and for the second, I shall take third watch. Please remember to wake me when the time comes. He directed this at Rufus, who simply nodded. Very well. I wish you all a good night. His words were so absurd I almost laughed. With my eyes still stinging, I was in any mood for levity. Gail gave me a strange smile before following Tabby out of the room. I don't know how long we each worked on getting our claimed sleeping spot in order. I didn't have my phone, I didn't have a watch. We each started to hunker down. June stood with Joseph near the door, murmuring, holding hands. A piece of me felt a sudden, burning jealousy at their intimacy, their bond. Dana and Sharif worked silently, shaking and patting frost off the thin mattresses and taking a small candle heater to place near them. I was surprised by how much warmth they gave off, but whether it would be enough. The door squeaked and I heard heavy hoofsteps departing, followed by June despondently walking to her own shelter. I slipped under the cover, pulling my hood up. I hadn't realised just how cold it was until I felt my ears burning. The heat returned to them, revealing how they had become numb from the chill. Despite how thin and uncomfortable the mattress was, and how nagging at the back of my mind was the thought that the dead person had last slept here, my eyelids were suddenly heavy. The thought of falling asleep and simply passing away, never to awaken, sent a brief pang of terror through me. Did it hurt? Or would I simply blink out of existence, like a bad dream ending? I closed my eyes, trying to put it out of my mind. My shivering calmed, and my body heat was able to win over the merciless chill, held by the blanket, my clothing, and the small heater. Even just that small amount of warmth was enough to soothe. My breathing slowed. The lead-like weight of fatigue pushed me quickly into a dreamless slumber. A low roar and the sounds of things banging roused me. As my eyes opened, for a moment I thought I'd finally lost sight of my good eye. My tongue felt like sandpaper, my throat felt like it was closing. My stomach growled, clenching and writhing. How long had it been since my last meal, my last drink? The lantern had gone out at some point in the night. Fumbling around, I gripped my torch with relief and turned it on. Dana's back was still towards me. I could hear her deep, even breathing. She must still be asleep. I sighed, thankful my eye had stopped hurting. A tiny amount of moonlight seeped in through the windows, coated in frost as they were. Another blizzard, or at least a heavy wind, had started up. The sounds of things slamming and creaking were distant, but unsettling nonetheless. My nose was frozen once more, and the cold had seeped through my flimsy blanket. I figured I should find some fuel for the lantern. My very bones ached as I forced myself upright. I slowly pushed myself to my paws, grabbing my empty lantern. My torchlight lit the room. I angled it away from Dana so as not to disturb her. Slowly I made my way to the table where the food was. The lantern there had also gone out during the night, but had given enough heat to thaw some of the water bottles. Without thinking, I pulled a bottle out of the crate and wrenched the top off, taking deep gulps. The icy cool water robbed me of whatever little warmth I still had, but damn, did it feel good. I nearly choked on small amounts of slushy ice. It evidently hadn't thawed entirely. I could feel it sitting in my stomach, chilling me. Part of me felt a pang of guilt as I lowered the now-drained bottle. The crate had a lot of water, but between 10 people, it might not last as long as it first seemed. The food crate held 14 cans, soups, meat, vegetables and fruit. A decent variety, I suppose, but with 14 cans between 10 people? If we only ate half a can each, that was 2 days. That's less than half a can each for day 3. I scanned the calorie labels on a few of them. Not insubstantial under normal circumstances. These were the precise opposite of normal. In fact, in cold like this, I could only imagine we'd burn this much just trying to stay warm. Gail might know more about that. She did suggest rationing. My stomach protested again and tied itself in knots as I saw the tin of processed meat. Real meat. The only people here who'd eat it was me, Dana, June and Stefan. The tin had a ring pull. I could open it, take a bite, just to calm my stomach, make it easier to sleep. No. With gritted teeth I put it back, a little harder than I should have. It took a few moments to steady myself. Tomorrow, when everyone wakes up, we can ration things. Just a few hours. I chuckled darkly. As my frame can attest, I was no stranger to eating light. My lantern. It needed to be refilled, if only for a source of heat. As I reached for the kerosene, my torch beam swept across the shelters. That was when I noticed. Rufus, Joseph and Sharif were all missing. June was sleeping soundly at the far end of the room, and Dana hadn't stirred. I thought Rufus was second watch and Sharif was the third. So why were all 3 missing? Putting my lantern down, I gripped my torch and swept the room, trying best not to disturb the 2 women sleeping. No sign of them. Were they all on watch? My stomach did another flip, but not from hunger. I'd seen the way the 3 of them were nearly at each other's throats. Despite my exhaustion and gnawing hunger, I decided I needed to search. The bridge was where they were supposed to stand watch. I pulled my hood up, cut my muzzle in a hand and breathed heavily to warm my nose and slipped out through the door. It was hard to tell the time given the near constant darkness, and no more than ever I wish I'd had a watch. My hand grasped a pack of smokes. As I started to pull it out, I remembered my missing lighter. My heart clenched at the thought of it sitting on the bottom of the ocean. I cursed loudly, not caring if anyone heard. I'd light up with a lantern, I suppose. The thought of Grandpa's lighter lost forever. Now, in an even fouler mood, I shoved my hands back into my pockets and continued my way toward the bridge. There were several flights of stairs above me, and I was not looking forward to walking up icy steps. The stairs further away from exterior access points were generally less hazardous than those closer to the outside, but even a thin layer of frost could make for poor footing. Each step I took up the narrow passage of the bridge felt heavier and heavier. Despite my thick, warm clothing, every movement I took felt like I was moving through tar. The unrelenting cold was a constant drain on my energy. Even pausing to catch my breath required effort. The icy chill hurt my throat and lungs. I really needed to stop smoking. Finally, I arrived at the narrow stairs leading to the bridge. I couldn't hear anything except the wind. That reassured me at least that they weren't at each other's throats. My stomach growled loudly again as I pushed through the slightly ajar door. "Hey, how's it going?" Oh. My God. The instant I stepped through the door, the stench of iron filled my nostrils and made me gag. I stared, open-mouthed at the scene of devastation before me. Streaks of fresh blood stained the floor, the window, even the overturned seat. I tried to call out. All I could manage was a choked squeak. My blood felt like it had been replaced with ice. My eyes scanned the dark, crimson streaks, my torch beam slowly passing over them. My ears swiveled, trying to tune out the hammering of my heart. I didn't even know what I was listening for. Growls, poor steps, heavy breathing. I backed out, my torch beam swinging wildly back and forth. That was when I saw it. For the briefest of moments, behind a control console, my torch beam passed over, and it could only have been. I let loose a scream of primal terror and turned, almost throwing myself down the steps. I sprinted as fast as my legs would carry me. I didn't even have a destination in mind initially, just away from there. It felt like my heart was going to burst in my chest. Even now, several decks down, I could still taste the iron, the sickeningly warm stench of blood. I burst into the mess hall, panting. "Everyone, please!" I saw the jerking twitches of June and Dana being jolted awake. June moaned, turned over and away from light. Dana opened her bleary eyes and met my gaze. I couldn't quite put into words what happened next, except that once she met my gaze, understanding passed between us. Within a moment she was upright, throwing off her covers. "What happened? What's wrong?" "The bridge! Someone... so much blood!" I could scarcely speak the words. My burn in my lungs from the near unbroken sprint from the bridge left me breathless, and the lingering stench in my nose made me want to throw up. Dana dashed over to me as June leisurely stretched and started to pull off her covers. The tigress gripped my shoulders and spoke to me like I was a child. "Garrett, what happened?"
What's going on? Is it morning?"
"Garrett, you stink of..." She met my eyes. Even my mouth flapped open trying to describe what I saw. She knew. "Take me there." Her voice was firm and uncompromising. I might have been resentful at this circumstance. Her commanding tone was somewhat reassuring. It cut through the primal terror. The bridge." I choked out the words as June approached, expression morphing from quizzical to horrified.
"What about the bridge? Is Joseph okay?"
The rising panic in her voice caused Dana to snap, shaking me by the shoulders. "Snap out of it, Garrett. Take us there. Do you understand?" I gulped at her, my mind frozen by fear. I swallowed and gestured to the door.
"It was... the blood. Garrett!"
She shouted in my face, gripping my facial fluff and forcing me to meet her piercing gaze.
"Get a grip. Take us there. Right fucking now."
She shoved me to the door. June glanced between us with dawning horror. I pushed the doors open, and with heart beating wildly with fear, I led them back to that horror. As soon as I ascended the stairs, Dana and June close behind, the stench of blood overwhelmed me again. My empty stomach lurched, nearly making me throw up. If I'd actually had that can of meat, I almost certainly would have.
"Oh my God, Joseph!"
Even Dana, who I'd assumed would be used to blood, was appalled, surveying the scene in open-mouthed shock.
"Joseph! Joseph!"
June dashed into the midst of the carnage, frantically searching for signs of him.
"It could be Rufus or Sharif. They weren't in their beds." "Joseph! Sharif! Rufus! Can you hear us? Make a noise if you can hear us."
The pair began to search, June frantically while Dana was more methodical, around the various stations, looking under them, and wherever there might be room for someone to lie injured. My own torch beam scanned the bloodstain on the floor, following it off towards...
"It's Dana! The door!"
She turned to look at me before following my gaze, and my torch, the bridge wing door overlooking the starboard side of the ship. Wordlessly we all ran to the door. It was being held shut by the fierce wind outside, but it had clearly been opened. Outside, the narrow walkway was covered in snow, but it had been disturbed. Blood streaked a path through it toward the edge, where the blood had spattered against the side.
"Oh God, you don't think..." "Joseph!"
We all ran to the edge, peering over the railing and shining our torches down. The wing jutted out just enough that if someone had fallen, or been thrown from here, they'd likely missed the iron deck entirely and plunged down into the snow that entombed her. The flurries and darkness prevented our torch beams from reaching more than a few feet. If they had landed on the deck, we couldn't see properly from here.
Garrett!
I felt a firm hand on my shoulder. She spun me round, bringing her face close to mine.
Get the others, in the cabins. Wake them up and bring them to the mess hall.
But... I couldn't hide the terror in my face, and Dana, despite her commanding tone, had fear etched in her expression. I gulped, nodded, then turned and sprinted the stairways the second time that night. The cabins looked even more of a mess as I dashed through the corridor, screaming for people to wake up. I hammered on doors, pushing them open, yelling. Stefan responded first. He apparently claimed the cabin for himself and appeared at the door, his alarmed expression not hiding exhausted bags under his eyes. Then Gail and Tabby, the latter angrily demanded to know what was going on, and finally Aaron. I ignored their protests and simply told them we had to get back to the mess hall. Surprisingly, they didn't argue. I didn't know if they saw my fear or perhaps thought we were being rescued. I didn't care. The sooner we were back in the shelter of the mess hall, the better. When we got back, the lanterns had already been relit. 2 people waiting for us. They weren't Dana or June.
The hell you guys been? Something rescued coming, never thought to tell us.
And what is the ruckus about? I heard Garrett screaming from halfway across the ship. I froze, staring at the pair of them as they filed past me, still confused.
Where the fuck have you 2 been?
Rufus bristled and Sharif unfolded his arms, preparing to be insufferable when Dana and June slipped through the door. Whatever anger the 2 felt faded quickly into concern when they saw them. June was completely falling apart, tears streaming down her face, clinging to Dana. Gail dashed over and took her from Dana, holding her until she could guide her to a nearby bench to sit. June made no attempt to resist, sobbing softly. When she looked up and saw Rufus and Sharif, whatever hope she might have had that the blood belonged to one of them was torn from her, she gave a wail of despair.
Would someone please tell me what the fuck is happening?
Joseph, he's... Oh, God! Joseph is missing, and the bridge... It's a bloodbath. A shock went through the room. Only June's sobs and the storm outside made any noise.
Bloodbath? What are you all talking about?
Wait a second, where have you 2 been? All eyes turned to Rufus and Sharif. Only this time their expressions were decidedly more fearful.
Me? I got hungry and tried looking for more food. I'll be starving soon in this little box over there.
I was in the laboratory. I was studying these carvings I found last night before we turned in for the night.
Anyone else vouch for you?
More silence. The pair of them glanced around with accusing glares.
Now wait just a minute. You cannot seriously be accusing me of harming Joseph.
3 of you have at each other's throats since we started this fucking trip. As everyone started speaking up, Dana barked.
Shut the fuck up!
She snarled, baring her teeth before calming. Aaron took a nervous step back. Before anyone starts pointing fingers, I want to remind everyone the only person here who, as far as we know, does not have a motive against Joseph is June. So I think we should all start by establishing who has an alibi. It seems unless Rufus and Sharif have anything else to add, they do not.
Now just wait a goddamn.
Well? They gave her mutinous glares but said nothing. I think it's safe to discount you for the time being. Garrett, who was in the room when you first woke up? Just you and June. And Tabby and Gail, did either of you leave your cabin during the night? No, I don't think so. No. She was firm, meeting Dana's gaze evenly. I didn't sleep at all. Gail didn't leave at all that night, neither did I. And no. Obviously it means Gail can't vouch for me, so I have to need your pinboard of suspects. Fair enough. Aaron and Stefan?
Who, me?
Stefan had been unusually quiet this whole time. In fact, I remembered he hadn't been at last night's meeting either. I was searching most of the night. I don't remember exactly when, but I crashed out one of the cabins when I found a working heater.
I just went straight to sleep. I was knackered from last night. I never woke up until I heard Garrett screaming.
Wait. Are we seriously suggesting someone here is a killer? Tabby. Instead of the usual sharp rebuke, she sounded more pleading. Fearful glances cast about we all started to realize the ramifications. Not necessarily. What does that even mean? The bridge is saturated with blood. Whatever happened, it was incredibly violent. And we found evidence that the victim was either dragged or moved himself to the bridge wing and fell. So, first question. Who here is wearing different clothes? We all scanned each other. Everyone seemed to be wearing the same stuff they'd been wearing the night before. It's difficult to believe whoever attacked him managed it without getting any blood on themselves, especially if they then dragged Joseph to the bridge wing and threw him over. If he was attacked by one of us, the killer could have worn something disposable. The ship has no sword, so she'd just spare clothing. Even so, it would be incredibly difficult to avoid getting any specks of blood on them. So, we should check ourselves for signs of blood? Specifically, I will. Now wait a minute, who put you in charge? I'm a cop, and I have more of an alibi than you two do. Since the only person we can reasonably sure couldn't have killed him is in no position, then perhaps Gail? Gail looked up from hugging June, fright in her eyes. Me? And Garrett. For some reason this upset them more than suggesting Gail. Why him? Why are you so trusting him all of a sudden? Because Garrett found the crime scene, came here to tell me in June. He also has the most sensitive notes here, so if anyone has blood scent on them. Oh, wait a second, I've been to the bridge twice now, so you mean June at least will stink of blood. I understand that. We have to make do with what we have. You aren't touching me. He glared daggers at me. What the fuck was his problem? Did he think I wanted to do this? Dana, maybe I shouldn't. I'm sorry. Are you saying you refuse to prove you don't have blood on you? I don't have to prove jack shit to you. As I recall, you chose to go to a cabin by yourself. Oh, how does that... So you not only have no one to give you an alibi, you're uniquely situated to slip away unnoticed, yes? Oh, fuck you, you can't... Aaron, if you like, I can check you. I won't touch you at all, okay? Let's just get this over with. Okay, you have the right to demand we prove ourselves. Are you saying you don't care if one of us is the killer? Of course that's all I'm saying. Check me first, Garrett. I've got nothing to hide, and soon we can all be sure this will not be able to relax. She stepped forward, stretching her arms out by his sides like someone preparing to be frisked. With all eyes on me, I nervously began to scan her clothing. Start with her hands and wrists and work down. Aaron, shall we? No, I'm next. Get this bullshit out of the way. Using my beam, I scanned as close as I could for signs of blood. I was careful not to touch her. Last thing I needed was for this to get confrontational. First her arms, then her back and torso, then her legs, and finally her boots. The entire time I sniffed as subtly as I could. The scent of blood was faint, but it wasn't coming from her. My stomach lurched as I realized it was coming from me. Regardless, I couldn't see a drop of blood. When I straightened up and gave her a smile and nod, I couldn't tell which of us was the more relieved. One by one, each of us submitted to a search. Dana did Rufus, then Sharif, who insisted he'd be next after Rufus. I searched Gail when she was done with Aaron, and Stefan. Finally, it was just me and Dana. Dana went first, Gail searching her methodically. My heart began to race. I knew I was innocent, but what if a speck got on me when I searched the bridge? Finally, Gail approached me. She gave me a haunted look. Clearly, she was just as scared as I was, for I assumed the same pose everyone else had. She scanned my wrists. I clenched my teeth, where everyone was watching. Then she moved behind me, scanning my back before moving in front of me. I tried to avoid her eyes, fixing my gaze at a spot on the floor. She moved down my legs. My fear grew. I'd walked on the bloody floor. What if... My mouth was dry and determinedly refused to meet the eyes of the suspicious glares I was getting. Dana stood there vouching for me, clearly not sat well with everyone else. Given her lack of tact, it could simply be she didn't think of it or didn't care. Or maybe... She stood, sighing, and gave me a reassuring look. Clean. I returned a small smile, trying not to sigh in relief. So, we're all clean. What does that mean? Well, it's not impossible. It's unlikely any of us are responsible. That leaves the question of what happened to Joseph. And polar bears? They live around here? Wherever here is, I guess. Hi, can I... June finally spoke up, her voice so soft it was barely a whisper. I want to look for him. June, my dear, if what Dana's described is true, then... I have to find him. She was louder now, rising to her feet with a furious gleam in her eye. All this talk, you don't know if he's dead. You didn't find his body. You didn't even try to look. June. No, don't you actually give me a shit. You're always trying to clear your own guilt. I'm going to find him.
Ewan, if he wasn't attacked by one of us, then whatever it was is still out there. Then help me.
In a flash, her anger morphed to desperate pleading. She turned to Gale, gripping his shoulders and begging.
Please, someone, just help me look, please.
An uncomfortable silence fell as she looked at each of us in turn in entreaty, tears silently pouring down her cheeks.
I'll help you.
He stepped over to her, placing a hand on his shoulder.
We'll find him, so keep your chin up, okay?
This was very different Stefan from the previous night, searching for his brother. If he was acting, he was good at it. The first time since our grisly discovery, I thought I saw her smile slightly. Damn, Stefan really knew how to step up.
Alright, guess we can form a search party. Are you sane? After everything we just...
Aaron looked at June. She gazed imploringly back, begging silently. Aaron melted, shame creeping across his face as he turned his gaze from her. If we're going to search, I suggest we also continue our efforts to summon rescue. Garrett, would you be willing to try to repair the radio?
You want me to go back on the bridge? Alone?
Someone can accompany you, but without the radio we are short on options.
I'm sure I can give it a go. Can't make any promises, mind.
Well, we can't ask anything more. What about the engine room? Tabby, would you be willing...
No, it's too dark down there. The lanterns go out. Gale.
The sharp rebuke took even Gale by surprise. They really were sisters.
I'll try. Want at least 2 people with me and all the lights we can get. I'm going with you.
Gale was firm, already picking up a lantern.
Yes, I can give you all company. Got a flashlight here.
This left Sharif, Dana and Aaron who would accompany me. Normally it seemed Dana was going to speak when...
I'll go with him.
Now that was surprising. I gave him a quizzical look. In fact, I think everyone did.
Look, I'm starving here, so let's have to move around the better, okay? Since a chance of roaming the ship with, or is it out there or hanging out with you?
Stop, you're making me blush. He gave me a foul look and Dana stepped between us.
Are you sure? Maybe I should.
I'm sure. Go find Joseph. Somehow, going with Aaron filled me almost as much dread as going by myself. We sorted into our groups, Aaron and I grabbing a couple of batteries for our torches while everyone else started gathering lanterns and fuel.
Good luck.
I offered them, and got a few smiles and "you too's" back. The fear and shock was palpable. In a way, I was grateful I wouldn't need to be the one to make the discovery of Joseph's fate. On our way, we paused for a storeroom. I was going to make any attempt at repairs, I'd need tools. Rooting around, I found a butane soldering iron and a toolbox that sorted useful stuff. Screwdrivers, pliers, tape, a couple of hammers, a hacksaw. Without even realising I was doing it, I had some of the tools for weight, for its potential to stab, cut or bash. I felt a pair of eyes burning into the back of my head and quickly dumped them back in the toolbox. As much as I might have felt safe with a weapon, Aaron seemed wary enough of me as it was. The moment I stepped in that awful scene, my nose twitched. The wing door was still open, the blizzard outside already causing a thin coating of frost on everything. Took everything I had not to gag. Time had given the blood time to permeate the air. The overwhelming stench of iron made my stomach heave. Aaron seemed less overwhelmed. I was briefly jealous of his less sensitive sense of smell. Aaron looked around in horror and paused by the door.
Oh, fuck me. What the fuck?
We both stood, surveying the devastation from where Aaron pointed me toward the radio room.
Let's just get this done, okay?
I nodded. Once I was in the radio room, I hefted the toolbox and placed it on the desk by the radio equipment. The radio had been intentionally smashed with a bladed tool, but was still largely intact inside, as far as I could tell. Maybe whoever did it was in too much of a hurry, or wasn't an expert. Regardless, I put it from my mind. I used a screwdriver to open up the main VHF unit. As soon as I did, a spaghetti of wires and cables spilled out, connecting circuit boards.
God damn.
What's up? Insides are more complex than I thought.
Fixable? Well, if I had power.
Aaron perused the toolkit, then wandered off, checking the bridge consoles and stations for something.
Where are you going?
I tried to keep the minor panic from my voice. As much as I wasn't too fond of Aaron right now, given his finger pointing, I absolutely did not want to be alone.
Now I can hear myself think.
As he shuffled about, I went back to the radio, though my ears were scanning hard for any stray noises. Over the torch in my mouth, I pulled a screwdriver from the box. Working away, I pulled at wires and took mental note of the parts that had survived being obliterated. The more I examined it, the more my hope built. Whoever had attacked the radio hadn't done a very good job. While I could see the damage had been enough to render it inoperable, it was definitely fixable, provided I had the right parts. The main concern was power, though. A radio like this wouldn't work with standard disposable batteries. Here. Aaron's hands presented a bunch of assorted batteries in a variety of sizes. These work? Afraid not. We need something bigger. How big? 12 volts, something like a car battery. Mixing a bunch of disposables won't give us the power we need. That was all I could find, I'm afraid. I rolled the batteries in my hands. They weren't in great condition. The prolonged sub-zero temperatures might have drastically reduced whatever charge it still held. I doubted even if I somehow joined them in a circuit I'd get enough power to turn the radio on, let alone get a message out. I needed a larger battery. I figured I'd cross that bridge when I came to it. I'll see what I can do, thanks. I continued to work. The soldering iron worked, miraculously, and soon I was connecting the severed sections back together with reconnected wires. Not pretty, and certainly not safe, particularly in an environment like this. As long as we get a distress call out, I'm sure we could all live with it. So how do you reckon did it? His question snapped me out of my focus, but it was his tone that took me by surprise. Accusing. I looked up from the radio and met his eyes. The look he was giving me told me everything. His arms were folded, leaning in an apparently nonchalant manner against the wall, his eyes burning into me. No warmth. Why? You must have a theory. No, I don't. I don't care right now. I'm trying to fix this fucking thing. I huffed and turned back, not wanting to rise to his bait. Liar. A mix of fear and indignation boiled inside, but I forced myself to keep it contained. I snubbed him, turning back and forced myself to concentrate on the radio. My hands were shaking with a mix of the cold and anger. Just saying, something happened to me, you're the only suspect. That's when I heard it, the quaver in his voice. Are you scared of me? He twitched, his face briefly a picture of shock for twisted into a snarl. He balled his fist and took a step toward me. I'm not scared of it. What? Now I was stood too, towering over him. A scorn little mummy's boy mutt. For a moment I simply stared, blinking at him as I processed what he said. Then I smirked. The fuck are you grinning at? I couldn't help it. It was such an absurd situation. The ball of anxiety in my chest so heavy I couldn't even begin to take him seriously. Is that the best you got? He stood, staring me down with a mutinous glare. I hadn't seen him nearly shit himself at least twice now because of my temper. I was convinced he was about to punch me. As much as I wanted to give him a taste of his own medicine, the familiar fear scent permeating the room told me everything I needed to know. Aaron, I'm scared too, mate. If you told me you weren't scared, I'd call you a liar. Don't. Don't psychoanalyze me. Rather you snarl like a fucking savage, to be honest. I cringed. The memory of how I'd scared him back in Svalbard hit me with a wave of guilt. Look, mate, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for snarling at you. I just sometimes... I spread my hands helplessly, not sure what to say. Some of us don't have the luxury of claws or fangs. You mean like Joseph? A pang of irritation shot through me. He didn't have fangs or claws, but he was built like a fucking tank. That didn't save him, did it? Aaron finally looked away, biting his lip. He rubbed his arm, shrinking a little. I guess I'd gotten through. Aaron, Joseph was... He'd gone getting Rufus someone, probably. I gestured to the carnage around us. And yet his body is gone, his blood is all over the fucking room. You don't know it's his blood. So where is he? I don't fucking know. We both stood in silence. I think even Aaron was surprised by his outburst. Having an internal pause, we both moved away, me back to the radio, Aaron slowly leaning over a nearby station, head bowed and ears limp. In, count to 3. Closing my eyes, I did my breathing exercises before getting back to work. I don't know how long I worked, neither of us speaking. I think Aaron moved from his spot the entire time. Eventually I stood, knees cracking, and I stretched. It wasn't pretty. It would definitely have got me fired from any electrician job, and with good reason. But as long as we could broadcast and receive, we should be good. All we needed was power. Hopefully Tabby could do something in the engine room, although I wasn't optimistic. For all we resented Joseph to say to the Sylvia, we really could have used him right now. Do you think she's still here? I blinked. I'd almost forgotten he was here. Who? I turned, anxiously anticipating another argument, but... Tears poured silently down his face. He was hunched over the station, eyes fixed on a collection of what looked like charts. I was speechless. I'd never known how to comfort people, tell them what they needed to hear. I always thought I'd come across as insincere, but... He screwed his eyes tightly shut and uttered a soft whine. You mean Carrie? He nodded, burying his face in his hands. I mean... Fuck, what could I even say? She could still be here. I mean, we haven't found anyone yet. He didn't respond, simply rested his face in his hands. He sobbed noiselessly, his shoulders shaking. Whatever lingering resentment I had melted away. It was easy for me to forget that, unlike me, he'd been here of his own volition, a desire to clear his sister's name and even possibly to find her, for better or worse. I couldn't stand the idea of people hating her, blaming her. His voice shook. I took a few tentative steps toward him before slowly, gently placing a hand on his back. I tried a few times to say something, but each time my words just rang hollow in my own head, so I stayed silent. I miss her so much. I was about to speak when I heard, or rather felt, a noise. It drifted across the room like a breeze and chilled me as much as any blizzard. My body tensed. A shiver went down my spine as I realised someone, or something, was behind us, near the doorway. Moments passed, my mind raced. I needed to turn. I had to warn Aaron. I had to run. But I'd forgotten Joseph. He was back. A harsh, rasping noise followed the sound of ice crunching, finally pushed me over the edge. I spun round, yelling and waving my torch. Garrett, what was it? I finally contained my flailing enough to fix my torch beyond the entrance leading back to the stairwell, and, just for a moment... Hey, I'm talking to you! He gripped my shoulder and pulled me around, his face still wet with tears, but now his eyes shone with fright. Didn't you hear that? Hear what? I pulled away sharply, shining my torch at the doorway, the beam shaking wildly in my trembling hand. I saw it. I know I did. You're scaring the ever-living fuck out of me right now. What did you see? This time he shone his torch beam around, circling the doorway as though checking there wasn't something that had snuck in. I know I heard it. If I hadn't been petrified, I'd been burning with shame. My instincts were on high alert. Every howl of wind, every creak of exhausted steel, my ears picked it all up. Fuck only knows what Aaron's radar-like ears was detecting at this point. Then it hit me. If Aaron wasn't detecting any noise, maybe... Okay, let's both take a look, yeah? This time he seemed to be the brave one. He gave my shoulder a squeeze and pointed, right me to move across the door. My heart felt like a fucking jackhammer. Slowly we both approached the doorway, aiming our torches. I wish I'd held on to that screwdriver, as pathetic as it would be against might have forgotten Joseph. With a nod we both darted in front of the door, shining our combined light beams through the entryway, where I'd seen that awful thing. And nothing. I could see the narrow passage leading down, not a single sign of anyone. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Slowly, we looked at each other. Aaron's face was a picture of terror. I could only imagine what mine was like. Then Aaron snorted. I did so too. How within moments we were both giggling before breaking into full-blown laughter. You massive fucking cunt! You had me. I was sure. It felt like an evil spirit flowed out of me. I was still scared, sure. The intense, imminent death feelings evaporated, leaving me and Aaron giggling like a couple of crazy people in a blood-soaked room. Fuck, man, I'm sorry. I could have sworn. Listen, why don't we line your nose and my ears, yeah? He gave me a little smirk, and while I called it smugness, I didn't really care. Really, would I have preferred to have confronted whatever I thought I'd seen? And did you fix it? What? The radio. Did you fix it? Aye. So we can call for help? Well, we can get power. Like I said, we need...
What was that?
It was a female voice. It was distant, distorted through the sounds of this dead hulk. I couldn't identify who, though. They might be in trouble.
Oh, what do we do?
We should go and check up on them.
But what about the radio?
It can wait. It's not going anywhere. Dana and the others could be in trouble.
You're awfully brave all of a sudden.
Are you saying you'd be happy if we all ignored you if you called out?
No.
Then follow me. I was not brave, of course. My stomach twisted in hunger and terror. This time I grabbed a screwdriver. Aaron decided I had a good idea and grabbed a hammer. We made for the door in the oppressive blackness of the ship's interior. There we go. That was episode 3 of Polar Night, and things are getting very interesting there, I think you'd agree. What's going on? I definitely get the kind of elder gods thing from those stones, just what I've heard about. But we will have to find out what that was in the next episode, which will be sometime. Karis is working hard on this, and also working on getting those backgrounds that went in. But if you want to help, I will have the link to the Patreon for Polar Night in the description. So if you like this one and have some spare cash, feel free to go and help them out. And speaking of patrons, this is the part in the video where I say thank you to all my patrons and donors on Ko-fi. As always, I do appreciate all the help you give the channel. And I have one thing actually going on at the moment. Someone is doing a commission for me for some video stuff, and once that's done and I'm back off my holiday later this month, I want to start on something else to do with the channel. I finally want to get that ident done, but that will happen later on, and I'll let you know if you're my patron first. And as always, thank you especially to my top patrons: Omar, Rafu, Spiderling, Smuto, Tiger Cub, Ara Amaterasu, Vulpers Need Coffee, Mohammed Al-Zamel, Mario Cervantes, Matt Kenya, Kartek, Evan King, Ida Koval, Harvest Mouse Productions, Grizz, Exact, Dissonance, Kovas Visser, Ryan Hall, Bieka, Bastian, Aaron Fox, and Andy Peng. And speaking of Bastian, he says in a desperate segue, and next week it is Infinite Space, which he is one of the main people on. So we'll be doing it in Finite Space. That will take us up the current to be continued. On that one, the week after, we'll be carrying on with Nevin, and they've just had an update to Mailbjorn's route on Patreon, so probably next month there'll be another Nevin with more Mailbjorn, and we'll see what's there. And at some point this month, because I'm losing track of where we are, how many weekends we have, there will be a Minotaur Hotel episode. We're getting back into that series. I think we've probably got at least 4 or 5 episodes to go before we reach where that currently pauses. So there's a lot more Mino Hotel to come, and of course we'll return to Polar Night when we get an update for this. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and please don't have nightmares. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.